Farhana is a singer, dancer, and feminist based in Vancouver, Canada. She is passionate about telling her story as a woman through music and dance in hopes to inspire conversations and challenge old beliefs that continue to suppress women and women of color. Farhana's favorite release so far is a cover song she did of Britney Spears' infamous song Toxic. In our conversation, we talked about the meaning of feminism through a brown or an Indian woman's perspective. We discussed the colorism which is prevalent in our society, acceptance of your skin color, and also one's self worth. I also got a chance to learn about one of Farhana's music and dance projects, Toxic, leading up to beautiful conversation about relationship, happiness, and self-love. I enjoyed this conversation and learned a lot from Farhana. I hope this podcast becomes something of value to you as well.
Well, I mean, I can only give you my perspective of like a Indian girl, like a dark skinned girl. Feminism to me, growing up, if you asked me that growing up, feminism to me would be having a choice on how I live my life. I think I don't want to speak for everyone, I'll speak for myself, but I think a lot of brown girls will resonate with the sentiment of we don't have like free will necessarily, like to live life the way that we want, in terms of career or like who we want to be with, or when we want to move out, or some girls even with travel. So I think just as an Indian girl, as like a dark skinned girl, the first thing for me when I think of feminism is I think of choice, having my own choice in life, being able to make my own choices. So that is kind of the first thing that comes to mind. And also just being treated like an equal and just having the same rules as the boys and the men in my family. So whatever rules that they have, the same rules should apply for me and for the other women and girls in my family. And also being equally respected to men and boys in my family, my voice being equally respected. Sometimes I think it feels like people in my family or people in my community, when women say something or when men say something, it doesn't carry as much. Sorry, when women say something and when girls say something, it doesn't carry as much weight as when if a man or a boy were to say the same thing. I could say, something that I guess comes to mind is I moved in with my boyfriend before marriage, and it was really important to me to see if we got along. Like, is he a good partner? Are we good partners together? And so when people asked me, in my family, in my community, why did you move in with him? Well, one, I love him. I love being around him. I love, creating a home together with him. But I also want to see, are we compatible? Is he going to be a good partner? And I got a lot of heat for that. It wasn't easy. Like, I definitely got shamed, but I had guy cousins who did the exact same thing, and nobody, batted an eyelash. He's making his own independent decision. But why can't I have that without consequence?
No, I feel I think that's a great way of putting it in perspective. Is that feminism is more about equality rather than that like one gender is better than other. It's rather that if the rules are uh, for men are something like these are the rules. For example, as you mentioned, right, that boys in the family. Let's just talk about the Indian perspective here, right?
Yeah.
Because you're from an Indian family, I'm from an Indian family as well. But then it can also sort of travel to a lot of South Asian and Desi culture because the culture and the ethos are same. That's why it's more about the South Asian and brown perspective. But again, in general, there is obviously historically there has been a difference between how the world treats men and women.
Yeah.
And then there's like a different perspective of feminism if it's through the lens of non-white people. And now we're going to talk about feminism through perspective of, let's say, a brown person, a brown girl, and an Indian girl, right?
Yeah.
And I would say the most common thing, at least that as a boy, as a man, that I've heard from my cousins or just my partner or just friends is that hey, it's just that families have different standards for my brother,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Literally, it's just that like a hypocrisy, and sometimes it's just that it doesn't make sense that boys can break as many rules as they would like,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
for
wait, can I stop you? Not
yes,
even
please,
break rules.
yeah.
They don't have the same rules.
Oh, definitely, yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
so when I think, for example, I think about drinking.
Yes,
I would never have a beer.
yeah.
This is just my family. I would never have a beer in front of my family.
Yeah.
Like my grandparents.
Sure, yeah, I get it.
Whereas like my brother, my guy
Yeah.
cousins, if they feel like it, they will. It's not even, I don't even know how much it'll even cross their mind.
It's like your grandparents, they would say, hey, okay, it's not cool that my grandson is drinking, but his boys will.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
get it. It's just that it can slide under the radar,
Yeah.
even if they don't approve of it. But if it's a girl, then oh wow, because I feel that the idea that the girls, anything that a girl or a woman do is just tied up with the family honor, right?
Yeah.
It is so bizarre in that sense, but then I feel that you have to just see, okay, how the culture has been conditioned, right, for
Yeah.
over centuries. And I'm not just gonna say that it's about just Indian culture. It's just visible like throughout the world, right? So it's not that hey, it's just feminism is just for specific groups, but rather I think it's just about equality, and this is beautiful, right? But that's why. But let's also talk about why do you think this word gets so much visceral reaction? Hey, why are we being a feminist? Where like being a feminist is something demanding something that's not fair, right? You're just demanding something. Why do you think that?
The first thing that comes to mind, and I ask this like gently, respectfully, is do you know what it means?
Mm-hmm.
And I have this one person in mind, and I remember her saying, you know, I'm not a feminist, and I definitely think she is. I just don't know if she knows what it means.
Maybe it's just that the word and the label is now being attached to
Some demanding,
something that's not right.
can I say bitchy? Like some demanding bitchy.
I get it, like work boss,
Yeah.
like work boss, sort of this corporate side of this idea, or just I get it. Yeah. Please go ahead.
So I kind of first wondered, do you know what it means?
Sure,
like,
yeah.
What is, you clearly have like a different perspective on what feminism means. And I think the other thing is women are not inherently respected the way men are. And what I guess going back to, I can say something and my family's like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. My brother can say the same thing and they'll say, oh, maybe we should, he must be onto something. I don't think women are inherently respected, especially dark-skinned women. I don't think we are inherently respected the way men are, the way white men are. And I heard someone say like a couple years ago that really resonated with me. And they said, women of color have the least amount of societal power. And it made me really upset because that's me. People that look like me have the least amount of societal power. So if we're not in these positions that are respected, if we're not in these leadership positions, our voices aren't really going to matter. Our voices aren't really going to be respected. So I think we still, in terms of people having this like negative view of feminism, I think we still have a long way to go in terms of women and women of color being inherently respected.
No, I see that, and I feel like it's such a powerful way to put it like that. But again, I feel that a lot of people, I feel that these ideas comes when when you have lived experiences like you, right? Because you mentioned that I have these lived experiences as a person of color, as a woman, but then a lot of men and even a lot of women. It's just that to just actually demand fairness in society, it requires courage, right?
Yeah.
So either there are a lot of women who actually are doing great work in social work, politics, but then there's another way that's more, I would say, that a lot of artists and creatives do, right? Like you, that you use your arts, your music, your film or photography to maybe talk about these subjects, because again, these ideas are not something that you can go out and tell a person that, hey, like let's say a brown dark skinned woman, that hey, you're powerful, but how can you make her feel that, right?
Yeah.
That's why that's how music creativity comes
Yeah.
into play, right?
Yeah.
Where that person can start to feel that through
Yes.
consuming
Yes.
that.
That's
So
why I do what I do, actually.
so exactly, so that's what I'm trying to now want to ask you that now, as a musician, again there is this idea of you are being as a person unattached to all these identities, that you are as a person, right? You love music, right? Music is universal, and then also this idea of that you want to communicate something deeper.
So my process is I create from my soul.
Okay.
So there's like there's like a central theme. And right now, I'm just finishing up this song called Show You What I Got. And I was thinking about just going back to that concept of women of color have the least amount of societal power. And I was thinking about like how I felt. And, growing up being a dark skinned girl, and this being Indian, like dark skinned people are not respected. Similar to like our light skinned like counterparts. Like their colorism in the Indian community is like very bad.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a predominantly Indian community, light skinned Indian community. So I was very used to being disrespected. I was very used to not having like a voice, like in my classroom, or like in my peer group, or not being taken seriously, or not being respected. I was used to being bullied, and I didn't grow up seeing like the prime minister of Canada didn't look like me. He was a white man. When I go to get my teeth cleaned, the dentist is a white man. The principal of my school, a white man. My high school was a white woman, but there weren't people in positions of power who looked like me. And it made me realize and think, actually, what really helped with this song was I was talking to a producer, and we're talking about this exact issue. He's a white guy. And he's like, I grew up thinking I could be whatever I wanted to be. He's like, I thought I could be an astronaut, I could be a lawyer, I could be a scientist, I could be this smart, savvy businessman. And it was so interesting to like see life from his lens of, you are someone where people in positions of power look like you. And I realized he had this confidence since he was little up here. He had this confidence, the self-worth, like the self-belief, his confidence and everything was up here. But mine was down here. And that's like a big gap. And so, with me being a musician and a singer and a dancer, it does take a lot of courage. It does take a lot of inner power and strength. But like, I had to build myself up.
No, I see. It's just to you, any person in position of power or authority, or anyone that people around you say that look up to them, as you mentioned, especially in Canada, were white men, right? Let's say again, even let's say if you grew up in India, then it were Indian men.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
So it's that.
I think we've made progress by talking about it. I think the progress that's been made is a lot of dark-skinned women saying, hey, I actually like my skin color.
Yeah.
I actually love it. And that like epiphany moment for me was, I think I was, I don't know, 17, 18, 19, something like that. And I had this moment with myself. I hated my dark skin, by the way. I had this moment with myself where I was like, okay, before my mind was brainwashed by these ideologies, before like my little child brain was like, touched by like this nasty view of colorism, how did I feel about myself? And I was like, I didn't care. I didn't care about my skin color. The sky is blue, the grass is green, the leaves are green, my skin is dark, my hair is black. It's just what it is. I didn't have like I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. I was just, that was just my skin color. And then being 6 and 7 and 8 and hearing people in my family saying, "Oh, I don't want to get dark. I'm not going to go in the sun because I don't want to get dark." And then I'm thinking, you're like 10 shades lighter than me and you don't want to look almost like me. That's when I started to not like my skin color. It was other people's insecurities. It was never, ever, ever mine.
So they're projecting their insecurities onto you.
Yeah, indirectly.
Yeah.
And for the record, my parents never said don't go out in the sun.
It's just that people around you, right?
Yeah, people around
your
me.
Friends, your relatives.
Yeah.
You grow up with. I get it.
And then maybe you know this, but in Hindi, like slang for light skin is safa, which means clean.
Yeah.
Like she's safa, or like
yeah,
she's light skin.
From where I am, it's mostly like safed. That's what they
Okay, yeah.
Chitta also.
Yeah.
Punjabi.
What's that mean?
Like light skin.
Okay. So safa really means clean. It literally means clean.
Okay.
But they're referring that to light skinned people. So what does that make me? I'm dark skinned. Does that make me dirty?
Okay. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that moment, when I had that moment with myself when I was like late teens, it was so weird. It was like a decade of me hating my skin almost gone overnight. Because I came back to what I really believed.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea because I feel that it's about when you think about these concepts, like as you mentioned, right? It's about introspection, right?
Yeah.
When you piece these ideas together, that what's happening. Like let's just take a moment and just pause and think about it, right?
Yeah.
So and then you come to a realization. So let's say when you personally come to your realization that hey, first of all, these are insecurities of other people around me.
Yeah.
That's one. Second being that the word that we're using, the language, it's inherently problematic because Safa, as you mentioned, it's clean. And am I unclean? Am I dirty? So when these ideas just fall onto themselves on their own weight, it collapses, right?
Yeah.
And after that, let's say when you recognize and you find your skin color something that you're okay, this is my skin color, and I think that this is beautiful. What happened after that? Do you feel that you were able to then attract opportunities, people that were like minded, and you were able to sort of then break ideas and sort of mental barriers that were holding you back, that were at least made for you by the society, even let's say not consciously, unconsciously?
So I think at 20 I moved out of Surrey to Vancouver.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, Surrey was predominantly Indian.
Yeah.
And so moving from a predominantly Indian community to now I'm downtown and it's international.
Sure, yeah.
And those same idea, it just didn't really exist for me when I lived downtown. Like I don't feel like I felt more respected being like in an international community than I did in an Indian community.
I see.
And I think being in that community helped more with my self-love because I had a lot of people say, I love your skin color. Oh, I love it. Oh, that color looks so good on your skin. And it did help with my self-love because I never heard that from Indian people. My
I see.
God, do you think I heard that?
No, I get it.
Never.
I get it. No, I get it. I get it because it is so. It's just that when you're just talking about that, it's just like alarm bells ringing on my past
Yeah.
incidents as well. That when people just unconsciously, when people remark about other people, and they also mention that, hey, don't go out in the sun
Yeah.
because you'll get tan. I'm like, oh my God, I'm fine being tan. No, if you're light skinned in Indian standard, that's good. You have to be like that. It means that you're Gora Chitta. Like that's
Yeah.
the word that they use. And look at them, he's Kala, he's that. So I'm like, these slangs, it's just that these are so jarring, right? Even as
Yeah.
a kid, I was like, I think it's something that's like, even as in my kid brain as well.
I know
And
it.
like, no, I feel that it's sort of a double standard because in my classes, I've been taught about Gandhi, Nelson Mandela,
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, a different perspective about that acceptance, equality, and then the way we are acting is totally different, right?
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, in an international community, right, where it's more diverse perspective, when you move out of not even Indian community, even if you're living in a small ethnic community,
Yeah.
and when you move out to a community where you are interacting with people from different races, culture, identities, skin colors on a daily basis, everything collapses because eventually you realize, oh, we are humans and we're struggling with life, or
Yeah.
we are just going through the motions,
Yeah.
right? As human beings, everyone, even if it's a fair skin or light skinned person or it's a dark skinned person, they are going through life just
Yeah.
figuring out their self worth, right? I feel that's a great perspective. And do you think that the Indian community, especially the younger generation, who are sort of now getting more perspective because they are in diverse universities, colleges, living in different parts of the country, and even going abroad just to interact with a lot of people. Do you think this sort of is moving the cultural direction a bit? Where again, it's still a problematic issue, but do you think it's still changing a bit for the better?
I mean, from my perspective, I've connected with a lot of South Asian girls in the South Asian diaspora throughout the world. So, South Asian girls living in Kenya, South Asian girls living in Greece, South Asian girls living in Sweden. We are everywhere, man.
Definitely,
Like South Asians are everywhere. What I learned about Instagram is we are everywhere.
Yeah.
And like the girls will find you. Like if you're talking about,
These topics.
They'll find you, man.
Yeah.
And anyways, what really impressed me was like that shared experience of what it's like to be an Indian girl growing up or what it's like to be a South Asian girl growing up. Like that shared experience, even though this girl is living in Greece, even though this girl's living in Sweden, like I'm in, Vancouver, this other girl's in Philly. We have that same South Asian experience. And what gives me so much hope and like what gives me so much joy is how progressive these girls are.
Yeah.
How much they are very strong. They're very independent. They're definitely feminists. And they're definitely outspoken. And they definitely live their lives with the intention of moving the culture forward for women. They're not repeating the same narratives that our ancestors, have repeated of colorism and women not having a voice and women being barefoot and pregnant. That's what you want to do. Go ahead. But like, to your question of, are things changing for the better? I'd say yes. I think it's going to take a lot of time though. So I put out a song called Toxic. It's a cover song of Britney Spears's famous song Toxic. Yeah. It's my favorite release so far. It's a slowed down, kind of dark and moody version of Toxic with some Arabian elements. I'm really proud of it. So if you're listening to this, like, please watch it. Please listen to it. And the concept the narrative that I pushed behind the song on social media was in regards to toxic relationships. And both in a romantic and like non-romantic context.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess like talking about those things, like talking about like toxic relationships and whatnot, made me realize with the engagement that I was getting, like how much people don't talk about toxic relationships because they're ashamed to talk about it because they think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
Because those two things. Because they're ashamed to talk about it and because they think it's normal. Asking myself that lately. Yeah. I think society has this ideal image of what makes people happy.
Mm.
Marriage, house, children, saving for retirement, you know. But I've been asking myself a lot lately, what makes me happy? And every day it's different. But I think it's a mix of getting a lot of sleep. I like to sleep. Spending time with my family and my friends, being able to be creative. And that's kind of it. And travel. Travel. So, and then also this ideal image is also like, there's this, idea of like hustle culture and like, capitalism and like, with cost of living being what it is, like, just, I feel like I've lately just tried to take a step back of society's ideas of happiness and just asking myself day to day, what can I do? What can I do to feel peaceful or comfortable or happy? So it's really, at the end of the day, some simple things.